Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another delightful episode of our Women in Publishing Summit. We're going to be talking about success tips today with Kate Frank, who you may recall from last year's summit. She's got so much great information to share with you, and we're going to keep on rolling in the theme of last year. Kate Frank is going to talk to us about how to become a rich nonfiction author, and you will find that the definition of rich is spans over not just one meaning. So this is going to be a great conversation. Kate is a business coach and ghostwriter. She works with authors who want to maximize the impact of their expertise and helps them as a business coach and ghostwriter. While most business coaches focus on motivating their clients to implement best practices to grow their businesses, Kate helps authors expand the scope of their expertise using the most powerful time-proven method of being seen as an authority. In case you haven't caught on, that would be writing a book. Everyone believes the person who wrote the book on any given topic is the undisputed expert. Being an author separates you from all your competition and leads to massive profit potential, with the caveat of if you know how to get to that massive profit potential, which is basically what we're talking about today, right?
And the potential is an important word there. I don't want to tell somebody that they will definitely make a lot of money,
Right.
but I can help them maximize the potential for making a lot of money.
It's a very important distinction, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us. One of my biggest pet peeves really is as I'm scrolling through Facebook or listening to a summit or listening to a podcast or any of these things, and you see these ads for write your book in 90 days, write your book in 30
Mm-hmm.
days, write your book in a
Mm-hmm.
weekend and sell it and make $10,000 on Monday. It's
Mm-hmm.
just hogwash. The
Yes.
potential is
Yes.
there, but what they don't
Absolutely.
share is that it's also thousands of dollars of marketing and years of list building and joint venture partnerships and all of these things that come in and a target audience that's already built, and no normal author, and I'm going to determine normal like us, normal business owners or
Mm-hmm.
moms or first time authors or fiction writers or anybody who's not like on a big stage already is going to write a book over the weekend and sell it on Monday and make $10,000. So let's just,
Or make $1,000.
or make $1.
Exactly.
$1.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. If you take the cost of that workshop into effect, it's going to take you a while to make that money back.
right.
And I have seen those books.
Mhm.
Very often, your public speakers will use those services
Mhm.
and believe what they're being told.
Right.
And, I could tell stories of how much those books are lacking
Oh my
power.
gosh. No
They just
doubt.
don't have, you know, an awful lot of public speakers think it doesn't matter what's in the book
Mhm.
because nobody's going to read it. So therefore, it's having a book is all that's required of a public speaker. And there's some validity in that,
Uh,
but you look fake.
yes,
If you are a
exactly.
public speaker out up there, you get the gig because you have a book.
Right.
You may even negotiate with a meeting planner to buy the book for everybody in attendance.
Mhm.
That's good. But if they get the book and they go, there's
What is
so many
this?
gaps in what you're telling me.
Right.
I have a story, but I won't go into it, of someone who, what we do as authors, if we're not coached, if we're not working with somebody that knows how to bring out the story in a way that your reader actually gets it,
Mhm.
then as an author, you're an expert. You're a thought leader. You've got a lot of information. So instead of starting at A and going through Z, you start about F and
Right.
leave A through E out, and leave the reader and the buyer of your book unable to really process and use the information that you have in that book.
Mhm.
And then you skip, once you start at F, you'll skim over F and go to G and J. You don't, a good nonfiction book that readers get value from gets very targeted and then goes deep,
Right.
very deep. So if you're not, and these book in a weekend people just basically want you to just download what's in your head. I akin that to vomiting. It's that valuable. It is something that's been in your head, been in your mind for a long time, and you just want to get it out. Well, that's fine if you're writing that book for you.
Right.
That's an audience of one. If you want an audience of thousands, then you need to go about it in a very different way.
So, it's interesting because I am very much of the do something. Like, I am not on the side of spend 7 years perfecting and editing and making sure everything is just right. Like, I have been one to maybe jump the gun and push publish a little bit earlier than I should have, and then we go back and revise and edit, which is the beauty of self-publishing and independent publishing, is that you have that opportunity. Obviously not the same if you're traditionally published, because it has to be final before the print run. So there is a lot more, pre-work that goes into it. But I also don't want people to get so stuck on, everything being so perfect that they never move forward.
Well, I'm going to say something that a ghostwriter probably shouldn't say. What's inside that book is not as important as to cause you to stay on it and drill on it and work on it and work on it. What is important, of course, this, the cover, the interior design, that's what they're going to see.
Right.
But what is most important is you have identified and written for specific readers, right, and given them value and given them easy ways to read that content. That interior design goes a long way in making a book easy to read. If there are mistakes in it, if there are things that, wouldn't be considered perfect, that doesn't matter. If you have to choose whether to use the things I teach about getting your audience, figuring out where they are, figuring out how you're going to reach them, if you have the choice of doing that or having an excellent book and you can't do both, do the targeting. Do know how you're going to reach them. You can get a better book once you've got that audience on the second one.
It's really, really true. And this is something that I see with, and you and I have had this conversation as well. You can have the best book in the world, but if you have no one to sell it to, it doesn't matter. And this is one of the things that so many people wait till so late in the game to start really building up that audience, really building up the people that are going to be interested in your book. So, I guess the question that, since you do work with a lot of authors, and what do you see with the authors that you work with that makes a difference between reaching a certain level of success? And as we have talked about before, success is obviously variable, but versus, people who just stay on the struggle bus. So what's the difference?
Well, I've seen a lot of them on the struggle bus, but they haven't been my clients, because my clients, I make it real clear to them what our goals are before we ever begin. And what I explain to them, my ghostwriting is not about perfecting your message.
Right.
It's about making it the most efficient way to get your message onto the page while you do the things that need to be done to build your audience.
Right.
That is much more important for you to do. Now, you can delegate some of that if you've got a really good VA or somebody who specializes in one of the social media that you need to reach your audience. You can delegate that, but it's still time consuming to build that. So build that, talk to me, I'll write your book. It's just that simple.
All right. Well, you have a specific program that you like to walk people through. So, and I know you had a document that you wanted to share people about the types of things that you're working on. Let's talk through that process. Would you like to share it and talk through it, or do you just want to talk about it, or we can do either?
We can do either. Why don't I go ahead and show it, because to make it a reality to the people.
The Rich Author Method.
Template.
Oh, template. I forgot the word template.
So what I want people to realize is when they get this template, it's not for you to start typing in, because there's work to do to get this stuff sorted out. Mm-hmm. What you want to do is to use a yellow pad, use 3x5 cards. I'm a big fan of 3x5 cards, mm-hmm. and get this information all sorted out. And if you work with me, I'll help you sort it out. If you don't work with me, then just know you can't do it in a day. You've got to take your time with it. You've got to work with it. In fact, one of my services that I've just recently added is I go through most of the things on this template in a 2-day author retreat now.
Oh, wow.
So
That's awesome.
I come to the author's home city, and we have a place where we can set up the big 3M Post-it notes on the wall, and we go through a lot of this process and other things that are not on this process, to where at the end of the 2 days you feel really clear. Mm-hmm. And there's something about being face to face asking these questions that has a lot of power.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like I said last year, number one step, figure out who's hungry for what you have to say. Mm-hmm. And in an ebook that I'll offer, it goes into some samples of how you can figure that out. Let's go through a couple of them. One of them is if you're a nonfiction author and you're sharing something that you're passionate about, that you think is valuable, then you've probably shared it with some people. And whether you're a C-level executive that shared it with your employees, or you're a coach who shared it with your clients, you shared it with people. So the ones that seem to get the most value out of it, write down what they're like, what age they are, what they do for a living, how their philosophies of life. Describe those people that got the most value out of you sharing it one-on-one. And that gives you some clues who your target audience is. Another way is to figure out kind of what kind of book you've got, and look for something similar on Amazon or on Google. Mm-hmm. And then go to that website. You can tell who they're talking to. Mm-hmm. Who are their target audiences? And if you have something similar, probably upgraded, more personalized, that you're going to offer in your book, then you can see what this person that perhaps is very successful, if they show up on Google real quickly, then seeing who they're talking to will give you clues on who that target reader is. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more exercises we can go through on that, but I don't want to dwell on it too much. But it is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. I agreed.
Just don't do anything until you've got that figured out.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, to that point, I'm in a business training program, and one of the statements that was made in the reading that we had to do for this week was so relevant. It said, it was talking to products and services as business mm-hmm. owners, but it says, mm-hmm. are you selling the things that people want to buy, or are you selling the things that you want to sell? And it's
Absolutely.
the same with books. Are you writing the book that someone wants to buy, or are you writing the book that you just want to read? And it's so true.
Well, I've
Or just you
started
want
to
to
write.
write, sorry.
Yeah, I've started a real, a full book on this topic.
Mm,
And in it, I talk about the fact that most nonfiction books are ego driven.
right,
They're all about the author and what they want to share.
right.
And that sounds a little bit hateful, actually, but the truth is they do it out of generosity.
Mhm.
They are trying their best to be very generous to that reader, and they know how they feel about it. They're passionate about it, and they're sharing it with that reader from
Yeah,
their standpoint. You
yeah,
know?
right.
But it's not it's not the way to build an audience. It's not the way to become rich.
Right.
I can name a dozen authors that I know that didn't work with me, that published books, and they are constantly in the struggle of trying to sell them because their books are coming from what they think the reader wanted to read.
Yeah. Yeah, we see this a lot too. And it's just like you said, the first building block is knowing who your target audience is, and part of knowing who your target audience is finding out what they want to consume. And it's hard work, and I understand why people don't do the work, because it's a lot easier to just say, "Hey, I lost 250 pounds following this lifestyle, and I want to tell the whole world about my story." And
Mm-hmm.
write this book about their story, but what people wanted to buy was the step by step. What did you eat from morning to night? What did you do? Did you meditate? Did you
Mm-hmm.
exercise? Did you
Mm-hmm.
they're
And would
happy
that
for
work for
you.
me if I
and
needed to
and
only lose
would it
50
work for
pounds?
me? Exactly. And so it's so true. I mean, weight loss is a phenomenal topic that people write about, and lots and lots and lots of books sell in that topic, but they're
Mm-hmm.
looking for, how does this impact me? How does this relate to me? How can it motivate me or do something? Even with memoirs, like that's one of the, I hear
Yes.
Brooke Warner, who's our special guest speaker, keynote speaker for this, and of She Writes Press, and she has I've heard her talk about memoir writing and the craft of memoir writing, and it's so much about like the journey, not only of the person whose story it went through, but how that journey is relevant to anyone who's reading the book.
Mm-hmm.
So and how you write it in a way that people get into, they see themselves, they see their own struggles, even if it's not the same struggle, but because of what is going through. So I mean, I really, before anybody can think about how to make money on a book, it has to be who's going to buy it and why.
Well, I come from a background in marketing. I've spent more years of my life in marketing than I have in professional writing. So that's what made me, it's unlikely that you'll find another ghostwriter that has any experience in marketing, much less the level of experience in marketing that I do. But so a lot of what I know and what I constantly say has to do with that background. One of the first things I learned in marketing is everybody tunes in to WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Mhm.
you
Yep.
know, and if you get off of that station, they're not going to listen.
Right.
They
Right.
couldn't care less.
It's so true.
So, so shall we talk about the next step?
Let's do it. Keep moving.
Okay. Uh, the next thing you have to do is figure out where you're that targeted reader that you've spent some time figuring out who they are. Where do they hang out? Are they people that spend a lot of time on social media? Or are you a corporate leader that the people that you want to reach are at organizational conventions
Mhm.
or some other thing that would give you opportunities to speak at conventions, give you an opportunity to speak within large corporations, and all of those things. Where do they hang out? Who do they listen to? And how you reach them? Because once you know where they hang out, the third step is, how are you going to reach them?
Right.
So if they, one of the most dominant ways to build a community these days is a combination of public speaking and social media. That's common, but it may not be your way.
Right.
And it's determined by the first two steps, who they are and where they hang out. And if you know those things, then figuring out how you will reach them has you reaching back into who you are. Yeah. What makes you bring joy to yourself while serving that target reader. The second step is during. And anybody that knows anything about marketing in today's world, during usually means some level of a pyramid or a funnel, however you want to define it. But basically, you invite people to get something free from you, and you get them on an email list, and you keep in touch with them. So defining exactly what that's going to be. I mean, if you completed your book, then the most generous thing that you can give in order to build your list is the most important chapter of your book, or the most valuable action list in your book. Something that will give your potential reader something that is so valuable they'll want to come back for more. And hopefully both buy your book and get involved in your community. So the other doing things is figuring out how you're going to engage that community in a right-away type of thing, and that usually is autoresponders, and if you don't know what an autoresponder is, you set it up in your email service provider to where you don't have to do anything. It just automatically sends some kind of a email response to the people that have downloaded the item of value. And you want to get those out there right away, but don't forget that things that are not automatic have a higher perceived value. So if you do something to engage your readers, especially in the first parts of building your community, and have one-on-one conversations with them, or have one-on-one email exchanges that are obviously not automated, that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. And the personal connection, we talk so much about the building of relationships and the personal connection between people and their readers and their potential business connections or whatnot, how important it is to have those real conversations. And honestly, I see this, and I send out a weekly newsletter about publishing tips and marketing tips and things like that related to whatever we've got going on.
Good newsletter.
Thank you. And, the ones that are just standard, like blah, 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 whatever, I don't get much feedback for. But every time I write a personal story or share a good story about something happening in my life, people engage with it. They like it. Exactly. They want to remember that I'm a person too. Yes. As a business owner, as a writer, as an author, as, all these other things. So it makes a big difference. I think I think it's getting more and more important in this world of electronic interaction and isolation. Like, people want to feel like they have real relationships with people. Sometimes a real relationship is over email, but
exactly. I mean, virtual relationships are real, but face-to-face has an added value, or at least one-on-one, voice-to-voice has an added value. So
Mhm.
as you're beginning building your community, start creating champions, because those champions are going to be valuable to you. I actually have how you work with those champions as the ninth thing of the nine, but um, cheerleaders are extremely important if they understand the value of what you bring. So start that, and I have to revert back to my ghostwriting just a little bit again. When people come to me and their language is not perfect, which is most of us, some of them expect me to clean that up and put it into perfect prose. And in fact, most ghostwriters will do that for you.
Right.
I tried to hire subcontractors, and that's why I stopped doing it, because I could not train these well written, well educated writers to stop writing in their own voice.
Yeah, it's hard. That's like it's hard for
Well,
copywriters all around to really pick up the voice of whomever they are.
it's easy for me.
Well, that's good.
I truly believe when the day came that I really knew, after working with a couple of my clients, that I have something most ghostwriters don't, I go, okay, God, now I know why I was born. Because, I'll give you an example. One fella was creating his book by sitting in front of a video camera with a videographer taking it and just telling stories. And when he got really excited about something, he broke into this fragmented sentence structure. And it was a very successful businessman, had a consulting firm in New York City, and was, easing out of that high stress world. But I mean, the guy had made a lot of money from being very smart. So, first of all, he was getting the transcripts and writing it himself. And I said, Jay, I can make this easier on you. And he says, no, nobody can write for me. I have to write it myself. And I said, okay, how about if I do one for you free? Let me show you what I can do with your video transcript. He says, okay, as long as I don't have to pay you, because you're not going to be able to do it. Well, I wrote the rest of his book, and when the fragmented sentences was brought up, he says, you're going to clean all that up. I don't want to look stupid. And I go, wait a minute. You're going to be speaking from the stage. And if when you get excited, you start speaking in fragmented sentences, but your book was all cleaned up with none of them, what
It's not
does that
authentic.
do to your
Yeah,
authenticity?
sure.
They don't trust you. So, in fact, he may even run for office. And you sure don't want to look. I mean, our current president is real good at authentic, but we won't go any farther.
He is
And
definitely authentic. He doesn't
people
hide
love
it.
him. People love him. I don't get why. He does the authentic thing better than anybody in political office has ever been. So that tells you something about how important it is to keep your voice, keep
Mhm,
your
mhm.
personality. And I'll quickly run through the other four, because, you may want to ask me about something else. But the other thing to do in the during stage is, what is your strategy? Define it very clearly. Even prioritize the things you're going to do, as far as, are you going to start tweeting? Are you going to start putting segments of the book in as articles in LinkedIn? Are you going to start speaking even before the book is finished. And I've got some clues of how to do that well. Figure out what you're going to do and what order you're going to do them in, and be okay with the fact that that may change. Okay. Then we get to the after. This is what you do as you're developing that relationship with your reader. So what's important at this stage, after you've got them in your community, is how do you make them feel part of it? How do you make them feel like there's something valuable that they can contribute? And there are other people in the community that they could have mutual contributions back and forth. So how are you going to go about doing that? See if you can define some of that. And then the eighth is how do I provide ongoing value myself by keeping in touch and deepening the relationship? And there's a number of ways that you can do that. And part of it is getting back to the one-on-ones, but there's also the ability to have workshops that you get involved with, masterminds. Some of them can be free, some of them can be low cost. And then, of course, back in what your messaging strategy is. If you're a coach, then a lot of that's going to be one-on-one coaching. But if we're talking about within the community, then you need things that involve groups, that involve people getting to know one another. Because if you can get them to get to know one another by the things that you're doing at step 8, then that's going to deepen your community. And then the last thing is, how do you ask them to add to the community? And of course, a large part of that is you recognize the ones that do.
Right.
And not only do you recognize them, but you find some way that you can bonus them or recognize, do something valuable to them because they saw value in your community.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, so that's the quick one through.
All right. Well, that was a lot of information for people to really consider. And I mean, I think if you go to any one of those areas and really start like looking through, okay, what are my action steps? What do I need to take so that I can do step 1, step 2, step 3? Like it in itself is a whole lot of work.
It is. But please do that instead of sitting down at the keyboard and writing your book. It's just
the book has to get written in order for you to sell the book. But yes, you definitely have to know who you're selling it to and why you're selling it to before you can do much else with it. But
well, I am very prejudiced about this, but the truth is, I believe that if there's one place you leverage, then it's in getting the book written. Doing these things is much harder to leverage, but if we've done the first 3 before we really get deep into your book, and then you just talk to me, what do you want your readers to know? Just talk to me. The book will get written. Yeah. So, and I've done a little bit of coaching where people talked to me, got the transcripts and wrote it themselves, or they just come to me with an already written manuscript, and they've never been good. Bottom line is, they've never been good. The book that comes from you talking to me as if I was your target reader, and letting me write it for you is going to be infinitely better than the book that you sit down and write yourself.
Yeah.
Because most people get in term paper mode when they write.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
I don't want to read your term paper. And I don't want to read your memoir that reads like a journal.
Right.
When somebody comes to me wanting me to write a memoir for them, I let them lead me to what I have to hear. But I have to hear they want to change lives with that memoir. If they don't have the passion to change lives with that memoir, then I can't work with them. Bottom line.
So, okay, so you work with authors in the following ways. You are a ghostwriter, you do business coaching. Is business coaching part of the ghostwriting package? And what
Yes.
other ways? Okay.
Yes, I will be offering some masterminds and workshops based on this template,
Hmm.
but we're talking about mid-year next year on those.
Okay.
Uh, but right now, everything that I do in the way of coaching is a part of the ghostwriting, with a few exceptions. I might be convinced to help somebody do the writing themselves, but I have not been happy with the results. So it
Yeah.
may not be easy to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, well, there's definite benefits to using a ghostwriter if you need someone to come in who's a professional writer and do this stuff. And when you're, building a business and things like that, there are other things that are big priorities to you at the time. So that's a great option. All right. Well, what else would you like to leave us with? Where can people find you?
The best place to find me is on my website, which is authorityredefined.com, or they can email me at kate@authorityredefined.com. I'm in the process of making some changes onto that website, but I'm a big believer in imperfection being okay. So just bear with me as I make these changes, uh, because my messaging is changing right
Yeah,
now.
I totally
Um,
understand that. All right,
so,
Kate. Well,
and I'm not very capable on that technological things. One thing I want people to know is, when this airs, I'll have a way for you to download a book that goes into more detail about this template and how to use it, with suggestions and lists and those kinds of things, to where it won't be quite as overwhelming as this call has been. So they can get that, and I open it up. They can ask me questions.
great.
Just email me.
That's great. That's a great resource. And, I'm sure that as people work through it, they identify where they really do need someone else's help, and what they can do on
Mm-hmm.
their own. So that's really, really fantastic. Well, I appreciate all of your information and support through this. This has been a very insightful and just information packed interview. So thank you.
You're very welcome, and hopefully I didn't overwhelm people, but uh, if you just remember your target readers,
Yep.
then the rest you can get in the ebook I'll send you, or if you email me, kate@authorityredefined.com, and ask your questions, we can work through that.
And that's also the beauty of the All Access Pass, or the digital pass, is that they can
Mm-hmm.
download it and rewatch it over and over and over and get all your wonderful nuggets of wisdom. So
With the ebook in front of them, which will make it really good.
exactly. Great pair. Like good cheese and wine.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Thank you. Have a great
You're
day.
very welcome. You too.